to sit in front of him, and I could see a little spark of light, something in his hand as he kind of turned it, and there was a ring, a gold ring with three very shiny stones. And so he called me forward, and so I gave him my right hand, and he smacked it away, and he pulled my left hand, and he put it on, and he hit it hard, and he said, "Perfect."
Special or most amazing feeling of getting that divine gift from his hands. And everybody gives him, flowers and garlands, but he gave it to me. And then when he gave these saris, he gave everybody, the matching saris, and mine was different.
Sairam, dear listeners, welcome to Sai SOUL 100. Our guests today are biological siblings, Sister Madhu Sonti and Brother Sampath Medepalli. Sairam, Sister Madhu, Sairam, Brother Sampath, thank you for joining Sai SOUL 100. Sairam, please share your story.
I think some of the most amazing things initially when we started learning about Swami was that it was in 1989. And when we started learning about him, immediately he started coming in in all of our dreams. Throughout the years, I would say the couple of interesting sort of themes that happened, to me in my experiences. Went in 1990 is the first visit, and unexpectedly got called for an interview, and it was just me and my sister Sudha. The rest of the family was not involved. We were in a group, and so they only called the group or whatever it was. And so it was strange because we never expected to go into an interview without our family. But when we went there, it was the first time we had physical proximity to God. I mean, that's the way I would say it. And I will tell you, the entire interview, I think we were in there for almost 90 minutes, from inner room to the, outer room to the inner room. And both my sister and I were just sobbing. I mean, crying like profusely. And I couldn't explain it. I didn't know why I was crying. I wasn't sad, or I wasn't feeling guilty. I wasn't feeling anything. I was just feeling like complete, this phenomenon was in front of me, and I could hardly breathe. And Swami was very cognizant of that. He heard us, sobbing, and he looked at us, and he kept looking and saying, speaking to some other people in Kannada, and then he would look at both of us and he'd say good thunder, like, which means I understand, or I get it, kind of thing. If that translation is correct. But it was really amazing. And for me, in my life, I never had a dearth of words. I always talked, and I always, love to talk, and you can't almost shut me up. But I'll tell you that in that moment, no words came. Even the initial, interaction of the first conversation with Swami, I wanted to ask if my parents were allowed to come in. And because we were part of a group, they didn't allow them to come up. So I went up to Swami before we went into the interview room, and I said, "Swami, Amma," and I started to say, and he said, "Shh." And then he pointed his finger to go inside the interview room. So I said, "Okay, that's my message, that Swami's telling me to be quiet a little more." I had a wonderful opportunity in 1993 to go for a summer course in Brindavan. When I went in 93, it was a beautiful experience. We got to have photos taken with Swami. I love this because I blew it up and got, or somebody did this for me actually, and just got a picture of Swami and I. If you can see that, if it's showing you up well. But that's my treasure. That's something that I will always have is a photo. And I got an opportunity to just, kneel right next to Swami, and so many of those things. But I would say that in that trip, we got just a chance. When we first arrived on that trip, we'd all come, from such far distance. And Swami was so cognizant of the fact that we were, in a foreign country, and some of the girls for the first time. He sent a box of snacks and specifically sent it to our room. And when I tell you, this box of snacks was probably 3 foot high and 2.5 feet wide. That's a huge cardboard box, and it just had sweets and crunchy chips and snacks and anything that we could possibly ask for, and in abundance. For the entire trip, we probably took stuff home because there was so much that he gave. And whenever we would sit, he would give sweet. And so I know that in my life, whenever I go into a group like my daughter with her friends, I'll always have, snacks and candies in the trunk, and things that kids will swarm to my trunk because they always know that I'll have, snacks for them. But I think it's just something, I learned over the years of seeing Swami give it with so much love and so much abundance, that we just made that part of our lives. And I'm very grateful for that, because it gives you joy. I think you would see him when he would give the things and throw the chocolates and stuff. He would just have so much fun, and he was showing us how enjoyable giving is.
So I'll tell you a little story about I was about 13 years old, and so that was 1995. I went to Patti with my mom. We were there for pretty much the whole summer, July through end of August. We were there, and I got it into my head somehow that I wanted Swami to perform my Upanayana, or the thread ceremony. And traditionally, it's done by your parents, specifically the father. It's basically an initiation. I'll just explain a little bit for maybe those who don't know so much about it. It's the initiation of a young man or boy into the study of education. And in that process, the father equips the child with the tool of the Gayatri Mantra, which, when it's recited with sincerity and properly, it fundamentally changes the biochemistry in the brain and opens up certain resources in the brain to be able to receive information and knowledge and process it and retain it. So it helps your brain unlock a huge amount of potential. And so, of course, I didn't know any of this at the time. I think what happened was we had heard a story where Swami performed Upanayam for someone. And I was like, ooh, that would be nice. I want that. So anyway, when it is performed, it is treated with a huge amount of reverence. It's a very sacred. So when we went that summer, we found out that Swami was performing a mass Upanayam. I think there was 200 or 300 boys who were getting the Upanayam done in one day, in one go. All of the kids would assemble in the Sai hall with their parents, and there were many priests who came. Swami brought all of them, and so everybody would sit in a row, and they would be given all of the various puja saman, whatever they need to perform the ceremony. So I said, that's nice, but I want to go, and in the interview room, I want Swami to do it for me there. I don't want all this stuff. Finally, I got convinced that, okay, this is my best shot. Let me just go with it. Because the opportunity came up, my mom convinced me to do it. So I was a little disappointed, but I said, okay, this is better than nothing. Let me just go with it. So went and participated, and it was a really beautiful ceremony. Afterwards, Swami gave us a discourse. He talked all about the importance of the Gayatri Mantra, and he recited it. He made us recite it as well. And then after that, the next day, Swami called me and my mother for an interview, and so he said during that time, he said he couldn't do more for me that day in the Upanayam because there were so many people there. But he said, I will give. And then he said he wants it. And he didn't say anything more than that. And all of a sudden, he starts waving his hand and waved it like this 3 times. And he kind of caught something in his hand, and I could see, I remember I was sitting right in front of him. He called me to sit in front of him, and I could see a little spark of light or sparkle, flash, something in his hand as he kind of turned it. And there was a ring, a gold ring with three very shiny stones, shimmering stones on top. And so he called me forward, and so I gave him my right hand, and he smacked it away, and he pulled my left hand, and he put it on, and he hit it hard, and he said, "Perfect." I was shocked. I was stunned. I mean, I had always wanted a ring, and that's what he meant by he wants it. I'd always wanted a ring, and my older sister got one three years prior, and I was always eyeing it. But I never really told anybody, but I always imagined it. I always fantasized about that happening, and did a lot of daydreaming about that. And I thought maybe it's just like childish contemplation, but what I realized many years later was the innocence of that time. When you want something, and for whatever reason, it wasn't just Swami giving me the ring, but how I felt when I would have gotten the ring from him. And later in my life, I realized that without knowing it, I was very actively practicing manifesting what I wanted in my life. And it was a very powerful lesson that came up later for me, because your mindset. I remember him telling one time, it may have been a discourse or an interview somewhere. He said, when you want something, or he said from his perspective, when I want something, all I do is I imagine it. I think of it, and I think of it not just the way you and I think of it, but from every angle. What is the weight? What is the color? What is the size, the dimensions, the texture? How does it feel in my hand? And it just shows up. So I thought about that for many years, and realized it's not just for physical objects. It's not just for rings or watches or lockets. It's not just for vibhuti, although he did it all the time. It is for everything in our day-to-day life. If we really believe what he is saying, right, that we do have that inherent divine ability to manifest what we want. It is a matter of believing him, having faith in his words, even though you don't know how to do it. He's given us a guidebook like no other divine entity has ever provided. The closest is probably Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, many, many, many years ago. But I mean, how much literature Swami has put out in his quote unquote lifetime is a guidebook of how to live and how to do things, and not just for this realm, but the next one. And he pulls us in with these trinkets and gadgets and interviews and opportunities and pouring his love. But it's all to say, okay, I am happy, I'm satisfied with all of this stuff. What's next? So I think that's a super important lesson, that a lot of times we get very caught up in the here and now. We get caught up in, I wish Swami called me. Why didn't he call me? Am I a bad person? Did I do something wrong? These are the thoughts I had as a kid.
When I reflect on, his desire for a ring, and I guess I never really had that. I don't know. I never, in my head, I never requested, mentally requested a ring, but I did used to watch in the summer courses, and even throughout the year, whenever the students would come, the Anantapur girls would come, Swami would be handing out saris, and it's not like I was obsessed with saris, but it was just so special, that he would give every single girl one. And I remember just his face when he gave it, and then the girls' faces when they got theirs, and how happy they were. And I remember thinking that was so cool. And in 1995, when we went for a second summer course, for me it was the second summer course, we had the opportunity where he had given, one day he had given to all of the Anantapur students saris, because they wanted the next day for us to be, for all of them to be dressed up in a certain way. But separately, after the fact, then our small group of USA girls had a special ceremony where he gave it. And I remember all the time thinking, that's so cool to have this sari that everybody has and it's matching. But I remember in my head, I was like, yeah, but I really want one that's a little different, because I want it to be a little more special. It's so silly. But I'll tell you, I mean, Swami reads that every small little desire, when went into the interview room, he was carrying a garland, and, he was walking around with a garland, and he was looking around, and he says, for ladies, because some of the boys and men were looking, and so he says, for ladies. And then he put it in my hands, in my lap, and he said, for lady. And he looked right into my eyes and he gave it to me. And I remember feeling like, the most special or most amazing feeling of getting that divine gift from his hands. And everybody gives him flowers and garlands, but he gave it to me. And then when he gave these saris, he gave everybody the matching saris, and mine was different, but it was slightly different colors. It was very bright. It was like the colors of the sun, like a crimson and orange and yellow, and it was just beautiful. And I just was so happy, and I was like, he even read that small desire and wish in me. And I remember one of so many things he shared with us and told us in the interview that year. And during the course of the summer course, all of the lessons, one of the girls, I think, asked, what is concentration? And then he said, concentration. And then he looked at everybody. He said, concentration. He said, madness. And the way he said it, everybody just started laughing, because we were like, that's so silly. And in that laughter, the whole room, like, kind of lost it, right? Everybody was laughing, and then he said, when everybody was laughing and it was loud, then very quietly, he said, single pointed focus. And it was like all of a sudden, everybody came to that point. So it was like he demonstrated what that concentration, that even amongst what I understood, even amongst all the madness in the world, you have to have that single pointed awareness, for God or for whatever it is that you're trying to concentrate on. And that stayed with me, to this day. When I try to meditate and I have some trouble with it, I think about that. I think about all the chaos, and that you just have to really focus and come into that.
When I was growing up, from age about 7 till about 22, 23, almost every summer I would go to Parthi, spend 2 months there. One summer in 1996, Swami decided that he'll give a discourse every day. And that went on the entire summer, almost 3 months or so, out of which I was there for about 2 months. And so every day I would sit and I would, listen and write the notes, and that helped me learn Telugu so much better. And what I didn't realize is slowly, those concepts, those themes, they went somewhere deep inside my subconscious, and they planted themselves there. And I feel like now, many years later, I can reflect back and see that some of the lessons that Swami tells us about in discourses or in his books, those are things we have to actually actively think and process and practice, right? It is a very active process to do some of these things. Just as an example, speaking kindly and sweetly to everyone, right? We've heard it so many times. He said it in so many different venues. But when you're in a situation that has nothing to do with Swami, how often do we actually do that, right? This is just our own mind and ego and mindset involved. but do we really pull what he said in and try to filter that and apply that to a particular situation? But what I had found is that I wasn't making an effort in that, and it came very naturally to do those things, and that has nothing to do with me. I'm not trying to say, "Hey, I'm so great." It's because you have to give credit to the master for the student's actions. That's all it is. So over time, this is what I kind of came to realize, that a lot of these things were coming very fluidly to me, even without a big effort. And that's I attribute that to hearing Swami and listening to him growing up. And now, I'm an emergency medicine doctor. I see people probably in their worst situation, maybe they're most desperate or they're most vulnerable, or they're most ill. And so what I feel like my contribution to society or to humanity is not just providing medical care, learn the things you need to do and apply medical knowledge and judgment, but the extra thing that I feel like I'm able to contribute is giving that person that medical care, but with love, with the intention of Swami's love. If I hadn't gone to Patti all those years, I probably, none of this would have come out in my profession now. So for that, I'm so, so, so grateful that he gave me those chances to learn and allowed that to sink into my brain, allowed that to come forward. And I feel like this is part of Swami's bigger mission. We all are ambassadors of his mission. I started learning tabla a few years before that. I was around age 5 when I started learning, and so as we got involved in the Sai organization, bhajans became a very big part of my life, and I was very interested to play tabla, but I slowly got also interested in singing bhajans, and I found myself drawn to playing several different instruments. So, I was thoroughly immersed in bhajan type of activities. We had bhajans in our home every day, every Sunday, once a week. And on the weekends, it was like hopping from one house bhajan to the other. It was always, every weekend there was at least a couple, and we didn't miss any chance to go to all of them. And I would play tabla for most of them. I remember even when I was very young, playing tabla for the Akhand bhajans, and I would stay up all night playing, even falling asleep, I'd still be playing. I mean, it was, that much interest. And I also made very good friends who were musically inclined. Some played tabla, dholak, mridangam, harmonium, some sang. And so eventually we formed a music group, and we would, participate in the bhajans together, but also give some musical performances at different venues. And finally, we came up with the idea, we all love bhajans, we all love music so much, that why don't we go to Patti and perform something for Swami? I mean, that would be I would say, the musician's ultimate thing that we can show our love for Swami. We finally got that opportunity, and we went to Patti. There was a group of 6 of us, and Swami came up to us in the darshan hall and approached us, and for several months before, we would every week write a letter to Swami. Swami, we want to perform for you. These are the list of songs. We're practicing every week. And so every week we would send him letters about this. And so he came up to us, and right away he said, "Music boys," he recognized us right away without any prompting. I mean, it's not like we were carrying a banner or had musical instruments in the darshan hall, nothing, right? It was just us sitting there, but he knew. And so he made all the arrangements. He told us, "Okay, tomorrow evening you come and you can perform in the Sai Kulwant Hall in the main dais area." He called us for an interview. He reviewed all the songs with us, and poured his love on us. And the next day we went ahead and did the whole thing, and he called us for interviews after that several times. And it was one of the most beautiful experiences of my life. I think I mentioned earlier, I'm an ER doctor, but the journey that I've gone through to get to that point is quite a long journey. It took many years. As I mentioned earlier, as children, we have a lot of innocence in our dreams. Dreams meaning, what we want in our life, our desires. And as we get older, the influences of our environment, seeing what happens to other people, all of that can impact that and can hinder that. So for me, there was a dense fog of obstacles that started to pile up. There were roadblocks that I inherently put up for myself because of fear of failure. So will I get a good grade? Will I pass this test? Do I have enough extracurricular activities? Am I good enough? Do I deserve this? Am I smart enough? Do I have the perseverance to see all of this through? All of these details would just get stuck in my head, and then anything that happened to confirm that, it would reinforce the negativity. So, oh, my grades aren't good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not worthy enough to become a doctor. So that kind of carried through until I reached about high school. When I was about 16, I went to Patti for a summer, as I had been doing. And that particular summer, there was a medical camp. Some doctors from the US came there, and they set up a medical camp in the general hospital. And volunteers also came, people who happened to be there also came. So I was in that group. We heard about it, so we went. We thought it would be good to help out. So it was a very inspiring couple of weeks for me. And when I got back home that summer, I decided, that's it. This is what I want to do. I felt very determined at that point. Several years later, and Akka, you can jump in here. I was finishing up my undergraduate degree, and Swami called my sisters for an interview. I think 2004, 2005, somewhere around.
Yeah.
And so go ahead, you can tell that part.
Yeah, and we had this fervent desire to ask him, because all of us were wanting to help him sort of guide, and he was the youngest in our family, so we both took the opportunity and said, Swami, Tammudu, right, our younger brother, what should he study? And Swami was just like, not even thinking about it. He said, medicine. Tell him to study medicine. I will help him. And that was it. And so for us it was like a done deal. And we thought, okay, now his path is just so clearly paved, and Swami said it, so like, let the medical schools roll out the red carpet for him. So we came home and told him that.
Yeah, so I basically took the baton from them, and I was like, okay, I'm ready. Who wants to take me? But wasn't so easy. And in retrospect, many years later, I'm so happy that it wasn't easy, because the gruel that I went through made me what I am today. So I took this test called the MCAT. It's the medical college admission test, and I did pretty much like below average. I got into one medical school, and I was shocked because what did Swami say, right? And that also goes along. His blessings are there, but you've got to put your effort, and you've got to do your part of it too. I went ahead and I said, okay, I got into this one. Let me just go with it. So I got into medical school, went there. I enjoyed it. I loved learning about medicine. I could feel that destiny coming, as I was going through the process. And fast forward a little bit, there's a very critical exam that you need to take. It's called the Step 1 exam. And it's basically a culmination of all of the basic medical sciences. And you have to take this exam in order to go to the next step. It's an 8-hour exam. So it's pretty grueling. So I studied to what I thought was the best of my ability at that point and took the test. I passed just by a hair, basically. Which was a relief, but also a burden, because the better you do, the more chances of you progressing later. But I cleared the exam, so I could move on to the next step. So I went through each of they call them medical rotations. So psychiatry, family medicine, cardiology, nephrology, surgery, emergency. And again, feeling hopeful, feeling like I was inching towards my goal. At that point, you have to take 2 more exams. One is a written exam, one is an oral exam. And I failed both of them. And I was shocked and devastated. And it was a huge blow to me. It was a catastrophic blow to basically halting my progression in this career, in this path. And I called my school. I said, I failed these exams. What do I do? Hoping that they would say, it's okay, don't worry, you'll be okay, everything will be fine. But they said, well, don't expect to get into a residency program at this point. Residency is the medical training that you take after you finish medical school. It's a on-the-job training, basically, in the specialty that you ultimately choose. So they said, don't do anything further. Just pause, study, retake the exams. Even if you pass them, the chances of going forward are very slim, which of course brought me down even further. But I did my best with the help of my family, shook it off, tried to shake off the heaviness and the sadness. And I, at that point in my life, learned how to study properly. And I really just lived and breathed the material. I covered my apartment in charts and tables, and I would stare at them and memorize and try to understand. And I had no other activity except studying this. And that went on for several months. I was like a, shut in. I didn't talk to anybody. I didn't go anywhere. This is all I did. And of course, prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed to Swami. Anyway, I prepared, studied, I went, I took the 2 exams back to back. I felt somewhat relieved, but not enough, because you don't feel relief until you get the result, which takes about 3 to 6 weeks, something like that. So at that point, I remember I was in New York. I was in a pediatric medical school rotation, and every day I would imagine that while I'm in my rotation, we're walking around seeing patients, and my phone buzzes. I get an email that says your score report is here, and I open the email. I would step away from the group quietly and open my email and check the score, and then it said you passed. And then I imagine calling my wife. I was married by that point. Calling my wife, and she's on the phone and she's crying because she's so happy that I passed the exam. This was the meditation that I had in my head. And I would think about this. I would try to think about how I would feel in that moment when I got that good news. And I did this every day, every day, every day. Finally, the day came, and it was literally a movie of what I had imagined. It happened exactly the same way. So, you can call this a miracle. You can call this the power of manifestation. You can call this Swami's blessing. For me, it's all of them together. And it made me realize how important it is, of course, prayer, but putting those positive energies around a good thing that you want, that can make it happen with Swami's blessing. The medical camp that I went to, that I first attended, 1996, and I completed my residency in 2017. And that November, there was a medical camp in Bhatti again. So I went for that one, this time as an attending physician for the medical camp. So it was a beautiful thing to bring it full circle, all the way full circle, 20 years later. But that was Swami's guidance throughout the whole thing. And like I mentioned, if I didn't have the rigorous struggle that I went through, I wouldn't appreciate every single day of where I am today. So I'm grateful, and I think it's important to recognize and be grateful for our tribulations because it makes us better. And then you drag along with all of that medical training, Swami's teachings, Swami's love to be able to pass that on to those who are around us. In my case, my patients who I see. So for me, it's so fulfilling in a way that I could have never imagined, even though I did imagine, but it's a whole other level that I'm fortunate enough to be able to live.
Swami, two things that he said always resonate in my mind, especially when we, come up against difficult and very difficult situations in our lives, which we've faced. Is he said, "Na daya meepai dandiga undi," which is my grace is very
Plentiful.
plentiful on you, heartily on you, and that helped me, and even spoke to my mother and said that his grace is on her children, and he also said in an interview, what he says to people, that I'll always be, ni intene ventene gentene, that means like I'll be with you in your house, in front of you, behind you, beside you all the time. And I would say that that is the thing that has brought us through this much of our life, is knowing that Swami is there, that guiding light is always there. One time Swami even said, I know, I see in their house every wall has a picture of Swami, and that means he has been there, and he has seen, which was literally the truth. Every single wall of our house would have a picture of Swami, and he obviously walked through those walls. So we find that his presence and his guidance in every small and big action is what drives us and what makes us feel grateful. So I just wanted to share that.
Sairam, Sister Madhu, Sairam's Brother Sampath, thank you for sharing your many, many messages in your stories. Pure yearning for Swami with purest of hearts. It may be materialistic, it may be some attention from him, right? I didn't get an interview, Swami. Just Swami then saying, not this time, next time, Sister Madhu, right? And then giving you the interview and giving you everything you even think about and yearn for, with so much love and proximity, so much closeness to you, right? He says physical proximity to God. You were able to sit there and feel that. And then same for your thread ceremony, Brother Sampath, right? You were visualizing from young age onwards how it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And Swami says, I know he wants, and he gives you that ring. He knows your purest of hearts. And as young children, I think that was a beautiful lesson for you to learn. But I think that instilled that core belief and faith in you, and that's taking you throughout. And you are genuinely instruments of Swami in the work that you do, and the love and the radiance of love that you are spreading to everybody around you. It's a beautiful blessing, and I do want to touch up on one thing, which is listening to Swami's discourses every single day, right? Whether we realize it or not, that message is going and sitting inside us as a seed, you mentioned. And then it comes out when we need it the most. For whether to benefit us or to benefit somebody else, only Swami knows. But then that's possible for each one of us, actually. Even listening, don't have to be in the presence of Swami in the physical form. When we listen to his messages, when we have good satsang, and all of those seeds are in us. And it's a powerful reminder to all of us that every message of Swami is there guiding us forward. I love the fact that you are also able to perform in front of Swami with your music group. What a blessing! What a blessing! And then Sister Madhu, I just love how you were able to go and spend so much time with Swami, right? By yourself as well. And Swami giving you so much care, that big box of gifts to make you feel at home, so much love for you and so much protection and showering of his love onto you. And then, of course, giving you a very special sari that is very everybody. So your heart is available and heard by Swami, and he gives for your joy, which also gives him joy. And it continues. It continues. And may Swami continue to bless both of you and your entire family. And thank you for being here and sharing your stories for Sai Soul 100.
Thank you, Sairam.
Sairam, dear listeners, thank you for listening to Sai Soul 100 with Sister Madhu and Brother Sampath. I'm Prabha Swaminathan. Until next time, Jai Sairam.